I think a lot about that Michael Shermer quote. We want to be open-minded enough to accept radical new ideas when they occasionally come along, but we don't want to be so open-minded that our brains fall out. With that in mind, what the hell was this? So I realized when I walked into my local theater to see Cocaine Bear that the last time I darkened those doorways was last summer to see Top Gun Maverick. That's how uninterested I've been in going to see anything. And yet there I was on opening day, no less. Yeah, part of it was because I've decided to do this channel, and this has become sort of a job. But partly it was because this movie seemed, interesting maybe? Sort of different. And a movie advertising that it's inspired by a true story. Wait, what? A bear eats a shit ton of cocaine and rampages around the woods eating people is a true story? Yeah, about that. Look, by now I'm sure you've seen somewhere that the only thing remotely true about this movie is that, back in the 80s, a drug smuggler did jump out of a plane and die by smashing into the ground. And a bear did eat a ton of cocaine in the nearby forest where the smuggler had tossed out most of it and died right there, proving that yes, cocaine's a hell of a drug. And as an official spokesman of the 1980s, I can say that may be the most 80s thing I've ever heard. The coolest thing, and a thing far cooler than anything in this movie, is that the bear was ultimately stuffed and put on display in Kentucky and is known as Pablo Escobar. As for everything else, not so much. But whatever, maybe it was still good, right? Well, take a look at this. This is the little notebook I brought with me to jot some notes on during the movie. This about sums it up. All right, I'm out. Take it easy. All right, fine. I may as well go through it since I decided to do this review a week ago. This was not some small indie movie. This was done by Universal. It was produced by Phil Lloyd, Christopher Miller, and Elizabeth Banks, who also directed. It starred Kerry Russell, Alden Ehrenreich, O'Shea Jackson Jr., plus all-time greats Margot Martindale and Ray Liotta in his final appearance. And I feel bad for every actor here because they're all too good for this and did their best with what they were given. For maybe 25 minutes, it was kind of fun. Problem is, it took 20 minutes to get to that point, and there was still 45 minutes left and the same joke over and over. Like Tolkien had Bilbo say in Fellowship of the Ring, I feel thin, sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread. That's basically this plot. As the old saying goes, if a bear eats a shit ton of cocaine in the forest and no one's around to get eaten, does anyone care? Nope, not really. So we have to have several mostly unrelated groups converge to become prey. You've got the Knoxville detective and his fancy dog, who was at the scene of the failed parachute drop, heading to Georgia in hopes of catching the smugglers. You've got the smugglers heading there in hopes of retrieving the rest of their cocaine. You've got the park ranger already there and an animal rights activist she's hot for. You've got 3 park hoodlums ready to become lunch. You've got a couple of foreign hikers. You have 2 ambulance drivers who are called in. You have 2 kids who skip school and one of their moms who's following them there. All of that's bad enough. But in addition to having to spend time getting introduced to this bloated cast, the tone seemed to shift depending on which group you were with and at what time you'd see them. We'd go from clearly a comedy while with the hoodlums and Ranger Liz, only to be dropped into a drama with Kerry Russell searching for her lost daughter and friend. In between, you're treated to over-the-top hyper-violence as the bear tears people apart, and language would seem written to be provocative and not natural. Look, I'm clearly no prude when it comes to language, but hearing Margot Martindale as a grandmotherly park ranger in 1985 drop a hearty motherfucker like she's Sam Jackson in a Tarantino movie was jarring, and not in the way intended. It seemed gimmicky and forced. Which is too bad, because when not being asked to do that, Martindale was really funny dealing with the park hoodlums and trying to spruce herself up for her meeting with the activist. And her being mad having to escort the mom into the forest to look for the kid was funny as hell, and a nice little Americans reunion to boot. And we caught the Matthew Rhys Easter egg as the smuggler in the plane to start the movie completing the Americans trio. That was pretty well done. When Ray Liotta shows up, you get Ray Liotta, which to me has always meant that even when he's being funny, he's unintentionally scary as shit. The movie never seems to pick a lane and stick with it, weaving in and out of genres. Mark Mothersbaugh's soundtrack is also kind of jarring. Occasionally you're treated to 80s synth pop to remind you, hey, it's the 80s. And others, it becomes full-on horror or action movie score. To paraphrase Millie from Bull Durham, this score, like the plot, is sort of all over the place. Mostly, I just felt like this was a wasted opportunity. I mean, had they pared it down to one or two smaller stories and picked a lane, they might have had something. For instance, had the story stuck to the smugglers' attempt to retrieve the cocaine from the forest and added a few more men and had a bit more Ray Liotta, you could have made it more of a strict action horror movie. Martindale would have also been great as the ranger in that movie. Same idea, Crazy Bear takes out smugglers one by one. Kind of think Predator. Or you make it a dark comedy and stay in that lane. Send in the smugglers but lean into their ineptness and stay away from talk about dead wives and friendship nonsense. Keep the wacky detective, keep the ranger and the activist, remove the kids and mom and stay funny and hyper-violent and crude. Or, if you need kids, it could be an action horror movie about a troop of Boy Scouts. Wait, never mind. It's 2023 and directed by Elizabeth Banks, so it'll 100% be Girl Scouts, so my bad. And their exponentially talented and capable den mother, who are in the woods for a weekend trip when the cocaine drops and they have to avoid getting eaten by the bear as other hikers are taken out. That could be something. Any one of these could have worked individually. Attempting all of them really didn't, as far as I'm concerned. By having so many diverging stories all coming in from different lanes, all it seemed to do was shine a light on the fact that there was very little story here. It felt every bit like a movie made by committee. I have no idea whether it was or not, but it felt like it. So this one really depends how you're wired. If you're a Sharknado kind of moviegoer, then by all means you may get a kick out of this. If you're like Shermer said, and you're worried your mind's going to need to be so open that it'll fall out and hit that sticky theater floor, then you might just want to give this one a pass. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.